No one expected this, not after Miami. While most of the paddock packed up and turned the page, Lewis Hamilton stayed behind. Not for a break, not for PR, but because something about the weekend didn't sit right with him. Ferrari's SF-25 wasn't just underperforming, it felt off, really off. And Hamilton wasn't about to ignore that feeling. Instead of heading home, he returned to Maranello, locked into long simulator sessions and hours of number crunching with his performance engineer. He was determined to find out what was going wrong with the car. And then, buried beneath layers of telemetry and feedback, he noticed something others had missed. It wasn't a minor fault or a small setup quirk. It was a repeating issue, subtle but serious, that might just explain the erratic behavior of the SF-25. The car was unpredictable, not occasionally but consistently, especially when it counted most. Poor grip, uncertain braking, a rear that just wouldn't stay in line. And what Hamilton spotted wasn't just frustrating, it was alarming. Enough to make any seasoned driver concerned. But the strangest thing? Ferrari didn't say a word. No announcements, no interviews with engineers, just complete silence. Hamilton, too, didn't make noise. But anyone who follows him knows, when Lewis goes quiet, it's not because he's letting it go. It means he's focused, and something big might be coming. And what he's found could change the course of Ferrari's 2025 campaign, or reveal a weakness they've been hoping no one would notice. It all started in Miami. Hamilton qualified far lower than expected and struggled through the race. The SF-25 didn't respond how it should. The grip disappeared when he needed it most. Braking points felt unreliable. The rear end moved like it had a mind of its own. Lap after lap, he was battling the car instead of the competition. Fans felt the pain, but Lewis, he was beyond frustrated. After the race, Ferrari kept their tone light. They spoke about learning curves and gradual improvement. But Hamilton wasn't buying any of it. The numbers weren't lying. Something didn't add up. So, while others moved on, he dove deeper. Not into hope, but hard facts. And that's where the real story begins. Back at the Ferrari base, Hamilton wasn't wasting a second. He sat down with his performance engineer and went through everything, from Miami race footage to simulator runs and raw telemetry data. After countless hours, they noticed a strange pattern. It wasn't something obvious on the surface, but once seen, it was impossible to ignore. The floor of the SF-25 wasn't reacting the way it should when the car's ride height changed. Under certain speeds or when the car faced bumps on the track, the floor stopped working effectively. That meant a sudden drop in grip, especially at the rear, and tires wearing out much faster than expected. It explained the strange behavior Lewis had been struggling with. The car simply lost its balance under real race conditions. This wasn't something that popped up during testing laps or in perfect situations with low fuel and smooth air. It only revealed itself during real competition. Full tanks, traffic, fast changes in speed, rough surfaces. That's when the car started to show its real flaws. But here's what really bothered Hamilton. Ferrari's technical team already had an idea about this issue months ago. There had been quiet talks among engineers that the aerodynamic platform might be too sensitive, especially at the rear. Yet, instead of addressing it right away, the team held back. They wanted more information, more proof, more data. For Lewis, that approach didn't sit well. Waiting wasn't an option in his book. If a car shows weakness, you don't delay, you fix it. He's used to teams that act fast, teams that don't wait around hoping a problem disappears on its own. So when Hamilton found out that Ferrari had known, even partly, about this problem and still chose not to act, he didn't stay silent. People close to the team say he immediately asked for a direct meeting with the top engineers and team boss, Fred Vasseur. But it wasn't about blaming anyone or causing a scene. He just wanted answers. Why didn't they treat it as urgent? Why let it continue when it clearly affected performance? Why risk more races going sideways? Fred Vasseur stood by his staff. He explained that Ferrari believed in checking everything with solid proof before making changes. That, to him, was the smarter choice. But to Lewis, it sounded more like hesitation than strategy, and that only added to his concerns. From Lewis's point of view, there's no time to waste in Formula One. Championships are won by milliseconds and momentum. The longer a team hesitates, the more ground they lose, not just in races, but in belief. And that's where the tension really started to build. This wasn't just about a car struggling on race day. It was about how the team responds when something's clearly wrong. Hamilton came from an environment where issues were tackled the moment they surfaced. At Mercedes, problems didn't sit around for more data. They were met with urgency. At Ferrari, things felt different, more cautious, more deliberate, and that difference was beginning to wear on him. He started questioning more than just the car. Was his feedback being taken seriously? Was he being listened to or just being asked to wait patiently while the team moved at its own pace? 4. A driver like Lewis, who's built his legacy on moving quickly, adjusting fast, and staying one step ahead, that kind of slow decision-making feels like standing still. The flaw wasn't about comfort or preference anymore. It was structural, built into how the SF-25 was designed. The car's floor was engineered to work within very tight limits. Ride height, tire temperature, track condition, everything had to be nearly perfect. If one element shifted even slightly, the entire balance of the car would collapse, especially at the rear. That explained the grip loss. That explained the unpredictable cornering. That explained why the tires fell off so quickly. Hamilton wasn't just imagining things. The numbers backed it up. Meanwhile, he looked at what Red Bull and McLaren were doing. Their cars weren't flawless, but they were flexible. They could handle bumps, heat, traffic, changing fuel loads, and still keep their performance steady. That gave their drivers the freedom to push hard without worrying if the car would snap out of control. Hamilton didn't have that luxury. Ferrari's setup only performed well in very narrow windows, when everything lined up just right. But how often does that happen in a real race? Ferrari understood the problem. That's why they decided to introduce a new floor upgrade before the Imola Grand Prix. This wasn't a routine update. It was a serious attempt to fix the instability that had been haunting Hamilton since the beginning of the season. The goal was simple. Give the car more consistent rear-end grip and widen the performance window so it could behave more reliably across different situations. But the big question was, would it work? Because while Ferrari was just starting to react, their rivals were already on the next phase of development. Red Bull had their upgrade package lined up for the next few races. McLaren wasn't far behind. Both teams had been improving constantly, and Ferrari was already playing catch-up. So if this fix didn't deliver a noticeable improvement, it wouldn't just be a technical failure. It would be a huge blow to team morale. For Hamilton, this update was personal. It could be the difference between staying in the title fight or spending the rest of the season battling for scraps. If the new floor worked, it could give him the stability he's been missing. Better traction on corner exits, less tire wear, and most importantly, the confidence to push the car without second-guessing its behavior. But if it failed, that would confirm what Hamilton feared all along, that Ferrari was stuck in a cycle of reacting too slowly. And that would only fuel his frustration further, because for a driver of his level, it's not just about having the skills, it's about trusting the machine beneath him. And right now, that trust was fragile. What made things even more intense was the timing. The update wasn't being introduced during a quiet part of the season. No, this was happening at a critical point, with back-to-back races and rising pressure. Every mistake, every delay, every bad call could cost them dearly. And while fans and media watched for results, Hamilton was watching something else: how the team handled pressure. All attention was now turning to Imola. This wasn't just another race weekend. It was Ferrari's first big test, not of speed, but of response. Would the upgrade actually help tame the SF-25? Could it make the rear more predictable and give Hamilton the tools he needed to fight back? Lewis stayed quiet in the lead-up. That silence wasn't indifference, it was focus. He'd done his part. He'd identified the flaw. He'd pushed for answers. Now, all he could do was drive the car and see if the team had listened. When practice began, eyes weren't just on lap times, they were on body language. Mechanics moved quickly. Engineers huddled over data. Hamilton kept things calm, but behind the scenes he was locked in, watching every adjustment. The first few laps told him everything. The new floor helped, not perfect, but a real improvement. More grip, less instability, and most importantly, a car he could trust a little more. But Lewis knew better than anyone. One update won't fix everything. Formula One doesn't give you time to celebrate small gains. While Ferrari took this step forward, Red Bull and McLaren were already testing the next one. The race in Imola was solid, but not a miracle. Hamilton showed signs of stronger pace, but the gap hadn't fully closed. Still, this wasn't just about one result. This was about direction. And the real question now isn't whether Ferrari can build a fast car. It's whether they can build a fast process, one that adapts, reacts, and grows with a driver like Lewis, not behind him. Because if Ferrari can keep moving forward from here, not just with parts, but with purpose, then Hamilton might have the tools to fight for wins again. But if they fall back into hesitation, they risk losing more than races. They risk losing the fire that Lewis brings with him. So now, with Barcelona and other key races ahead, the pressure is on. Not just for results, but for belief. Because this story isn't about a car. It's about trust, timing, and whether a legendary driver and an iconic team can finally get in sync before it's too late.